Good day, everyone. This is my first foray into the world of YouTubing to pass on some of my knowledge before it disappears. Let me introduce myself first. My name's Arthur Birch and I live in Sydney, and in 1997 I joined the New South Wales Police as a Special Constable and Parking Patrol Officer. In 2002, as it seemed there was something wrong with the system after 5 years in the service. Before all parking police were transferred over to councils, I wrote a book called Not Guilty, Your Worship, based on the inconsistencies in how the law was being applied incorrectly. So it seemed that we were taught at the police academy to issue fines based on what the sign said, not on what the references to the rules of law actually stated. About the same time, while I was visiting a friend in St George Hospital, I saw a vacant parking spot as I was driving down the road ahead of me near an intersection, and it was 90-degree angle parking. So I drove straight into the parking space. When I returned, I found that I'd been issued with an infringement. So I thought, when I return to work, I'm going to check the reference to the rule of law to make sure that it's been issued correctly and lawfully, because if my job was being transferred over to councils, as it was, I wanted to be sure that it was done correctly. I read the reference to the rule of law 3 times to be sure that I understood it correctly, exactly as it was meant to apply to the offence of 90-degree angle parking rear to curb. You'll see the signs, while the sign said rear to curb, 90-degree angle parking, I parked front to curb. I didn't read the signs when I parked because I was in a hurry. I simply could not believe that what I had done was in fact wrong, when according to the rule of law applicable to the offence of not position rear a vehicle correctly, that I was in fact parked correctly according to the law. Now, it's been changed now, but under the reference to, I think it was clause 123A1 C or B, doesn't matter, there was 2 subclauses for not position front of vehicle correctly, and 2 subclauses and not position rear vehicle correctly. And because I had parked 90 degrees, but not in accordance with the signs, that the reference to the rule of law was quite different and specific, which in effect meant that I was parked as I should have been, but not in accordance with the sign. There was something wrong that I simply couldn't believe what was wrong, when according to the law I was in fact correct. Now, I've written a book, the rest is history. This all occurred about the same time of the transition and transfer of all parking police over to councils. I thought, well, if this is correct, what else was wrong or being interpreted incorrectly? And I said to myself, I'm going to write a book. As I mulled over, if you like, what to call my book, I picked the title from many ideas that I had come up with to call it Not Guilty, Your Worship, because really all you're doing is you're not pleading guilty to something that you couldn't be found guilty of, when in fact it was incorrect, or reference to rule of law was incorrect, or whatever reason, therefore you would plead not guilty. In my last weeks, months, at Botany Police Station and Mascot Police Station, I carried around a notebook with me. And to get ideas for my book, I would stop next to a vehicle and open my notebook, and people would think I'm writing out a ticket for something, when in fact I was making contemporaneous notes to save onto my old floppy disks that I carried around with me everywhere. And when I got back to work, I'd start typing on my floppy disk to get ideas for the book. Someone said to me, if you're going to write a book about something serious, you must put some humour into it. Having said that, it went from about 50 pages to 120 pages in about 4 weeks. And just to show you how much apathy there was out there amongst all of my own colleagues in the police service, just before the end came, I sent an email to 88 of the 182 parking officers in the state of New South Wales. I don't remember the exact figures, but I said to them, if the sign said 90-degree angle parking rear to curb and a vehicle parked front to curb, what offence would you issue an infringement for? not positioned front of vehicle correctly or not positioned rear of vehicle correctly. Only 5 people replied, and 2 got it right, and 3 answered incorrectly. This told me that there was something terribly wrong with the system. This story had to be told. I figured, well, if my job's going over to council, I won't be working for the police service much longer, and I decided to write a book. The results told me that approximately 40% of the people I sent questions to knew what they were doing was correct, because 2 got it right and 3 got it wrong. And what happened to the other 40%, other 60%, I mean? Did they know what they were doing was correct or incorrect, or did they simply not answer because it was apathy? This quickly became the issue with the other 81 people who I sent the email to that were so entrenched in their own ways that they didn't care, or they didn't want to be told by someone who was only new in the job. I could not find a publisher when I decided to write my book. I'd formatted it and typed it up and put humour into it, and told stories about different ideas that had come to my head, and I printed only 1,000 copies myself, which I self-published at great personal expense. I've given away more copies to the media when doing stories. I've given away more. It's going blurry on me. Sorry. I've given away more copies to the media when doing stories, and I've given up how many interviews I've done. I actually had a website put up as a result of me getting a person off a parking fine at Blacktown TAFE, and the person just happened to be in the IT department, and when I told the story to this girl, she said, I'll get my boss to, they do IT classes, and I had the pleasure of going to Blacktown TAFE and telling the students what I wanted for a website, and I put it into their curriculum that whoever the lucky student was did the best website from what I wanted based on my knowledge and advice that I could offer, that I got to go and pick the best of 15 websites. And then of course I had that going for a while, but there's a lot of apathy on both sides of the fence from parking and enforcement officers and from members of the public. You see, no one wants to get parking tickets, but no one wants to pay advice. Now, you must remember, I cannot give you legal advice because I'm not a lawyer. I can give you my professional advice, and I will give you my professional advice based on information that I have obtained through my own knowledge and experiences. Now, when the Australian road rules, I must also state that the advice I give you is only references to New South Wales traffic and parking laws. When the Australian road rules were introduced in, I think it was 1992 or 95, initially with a 5-year transition period, because New South Wales had what's called a 3-tier parking system. We had no stopping, no standing, and no parking. And to bring New South Wales into line with the other states and territories, they extended the 5-year period to 7 years. I think it was till 1999. Now, I can give you a couple of stories where I've given simple advice to people based on the fact that everyone makes mistakes, whether it's a police officer or a parking officer. And the first that comes to mind is a friend of mine who ran a pottery business in Marrickville, was making a delivery from Marrickville to Lane Cove, and then she was going across to Bankstown to get her car registered. Now, that's not normal. The fact that she was driving a car that was unregistered, she found out the day before that her pink slip had expired, because normally they're only good for 28 days. And on the 29th day she realised this, so she decided to go straight back over to Bankstown and get the car registered. But she was going via Lane Cove. She got stopped in the tracks in the Burwood area by Highway Patrol because the car was unregistered. And she had a short conversation with the police officer. And it's all about proving the time. The time is an essential ingredient in proving any offence. And she thought she was being let off when she had a conversation with the police officer. She showed him the check that she had already written out from the day before that expired, the pink slip which expired. and she was going to Bankstown but going to deliver pottery, and the police officer said to her, look, you can't go to Lane Cove and deliver your pottery, go straight to Bankstown. So she thought he was letting her off. And she did what I would have done, I guess, than anyone else, pooped her pants and went straight over to Bankstown. She got the car registered. The first question I said to her was, can you be sure of the time? And she said, yes, it was about 11 o'clock in the morning. And I said, are you sure of that? Because the first thing a police officer is going to do is to do a radio check on your vehicle, and it'll all be logged in the police radio log. And she said, yes, I'm sure. All right. So she got the car registered. She got a pink slip. And the first thing that you do when you get a pink slip is get a brake test report. And the brake test report has a time and a date when it's been tested. She went and got the car registered, so by about 12 or 12:10, the car was registered. Only trouble is, when she thought the police officers were letting her off, they went back, they must have got called away to another job, and they went back to the police station having their lunch, whatever they were doing. They decided to write the ticket out. And the ticket was written out from 1:05 to 1:10 p.m. So quite clearly, she was not guilty of the offence, because by 12 o'clock or 12:10 the vehicle was registered, and only because the fact they didn't stop her and give her the ticket on the spot. They've written it out later. She got off the fine. $1,000 a week before Christmas. I'm that girl's best friend for life now, because I saved her $1,000, a young girl with a family, and I got her off the fine. Now that's one of the things it's all about. And the other one is that some of my own colleagues in the police department issued a fine for a parking complaint they'd received in Mascot. And every time I got into a police car, I'd look at the PIN book and I'd flick through it and see silly mistakes. And even to a point, I started attending training days at Mascot to give police officers talks in how to issue fines correctly. And I said to this particular police officer, you attended a parking complaint up in Coward Street, Mascot, wherever it was. And it was half-hour parking. I said, and I told her what she did was wrong. She said, but she had a parking complaint that the vehicle been parked there all day in the half-hour parking. And I said to her, but how do you know that? She said she had an eyewitness who sat there all day and looked at it. I said, are you saying this woman sat there all day and watched this car and didn't move? She didn't get up and go to the bathroom or make a cup of tea or have lunch or whatever? And the only mistake she made was that she issued the infringement from 6:15 to 6:30 p.m. because that's what time she attended the scene. The fact of the matter is that all of the signs finished at 6 p.m. So again, she couldn't have been guilty. So all I will ever seek to do and tell you, watching these podcasts, whatever you want to call them, is that it's all about time. And under Section 16G of the Criminal Procedure Act, and you can all look these up, if you like, of the Criminal Procedure Act of 1986, I think it is, an indictment is not void, erroneous or defective unless the time is an essential ingredient in proving the offence. And from time to time I will go through the rules and regulations one by one, and I will give you examples over the coming weeks, months, just how people can make mistakes, which doesn't necessarily mean you're guilty or not guilty, but it will show that you could not be found guilty because the officer has made simple mistakes. I must preface my next videos by placing the emphasis on individual road rules and how they are being applied and still are being applied. And under the next video, I will start with Rule 167, which is about no stopping. I hope you enjoy these videos, and I'm sure, like me, you will learn from the experience. And I'm calling myself Arthur Birch on parole, because let me tell you, if the RTA and some of these councils, they won't give me a job now, including the RTA, they won't give me a job, and don't let anyone tell you they don't discriminate against you on the basis of your age or you know too much, but they do it to me. And that gives me more pleasure to start finding more things wrong with the system. And I hope you enjoy my videos, and look forward to my next one. Thanks very much.